Do you enjoy celebrating Halloween with friends and family?
Or do you think it's silly, maybe even dangerous?
What happens if we take a deeper look at Halloween? I'm Tessa
And I'm Dave Denny.
And this is Fire and Light.
Conversations on life, love, and soul.
It's October, one of my favorite months in the year. Autumn has arrived. And what's happening here?
What's happening here? We're roasting chilies, for example, this time of year, and the weather is cooling off.
Finally, after our brutal summer, cooler temperatures. So, time to think about orange pumpkins. Time to think about Halloween.
So, thinking of Halloween, tell me more about how did it come to the United States anyway? What's the deal?
Yeah, let's take a deeper look. It's not just a frivolous day. It has some pretty serious origins, which mean a lot to me. The whole day means a lot to me. So we owe Halloween to the Celtic tradition, to the ancient Celts who lived all over Europe from 1000 BC until 100.
Yeah, so not just in Ireland.
Not just in Ireland, all over Europe. Listeners may know that the tradition, it was a druidic tradition, a nature tradition. And so the roots of Halloween are druidic, Celtic and druidic. And the word for the end of summer, if you look at it in English, it would look like you say it Samhain. It's pronounced Samhain. Samhain. Keep that ween part in your mind. And it means summer's end. So it was a big festival of celebrating the end of summer, the harvest. Cattle were slaughtered for the feast, and their bones were burned in a fire, which were called bonfires, which is where we get our word bonfire.
Oh.
It comes from bonfire from the Celts.
Wow.
And on this night, which was October 21st, the beginning of the Celtic New Year, end of summer, beginning of the Celtic New Year, those who had died the year before were making their final journey. And the god of the dead, Samhain, came to judge. If you had been good, then you were not turned into an animal. This is where we get dressing up in Halloween costumes. So the Celts would dress themselves as animals in commemoration of what their god Samhain was doing. And it was a major festival in the ancient Celtic world, which then moved into the Irish world in Ireland.
But then what happened when it came here?
Well, of course, our background, our colonial American background is puritanical because of the Puritans. So they didn't like Halloween.
I wouldn't think so.
No, they thought it was superstitious. They thought it was even associated with black magic. So there was no Halloween in America until the Irish moved in the mid 1800s after the potato famine. And they brought the whole tradition with them, including dressing up in costumes and
jack-o'-lanterns?
Jack-o'-lanterns. Jack-o'-lanterns are Irish. Now, if you can visualize this, the Irish carved jack-o'-lanterns out of either potatoes or turnips.
Oh, they must have been tiny.
It certainly was a big step up when they came to America and they realized that the pumpkin, which is a new world vegetable, made a much better jack-o'-lantern.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not going to tell you all about it. There's a whole thing about who Jack was and why you carried a lantern on this night that you carved out of your potato or your turnip or your pumpkin. My post this month is all about the jack-o'-lantern, all about the origins of Halloween, why I love it so much. And we can get into that in a bit. Also, just want to talk about the word Halloween. So this Celtic Festival of the Dead was originally October 31st. The early Christian church used to celebrate the Feast of All Saints on May 13th.
No.
So All Saints, the other way to say that would be All the Holy or All Hallows.
Mm-hmm.
And in the 8th century, the Pope changed that feast of All Hallows, All Saints, All the Holy, to November 1st, which made October 31st the evening of All Hallows, or All Hallows Evening, All Hallows Eve, and that became Halloween. So that's how we get the word. And also, let me just say, this is I love doing this on my post. There was a tradition of eating a special food called a soul cake. So if you go to tessabalecki.com to my post called Smiling Jack O' Jesus, that's what it's called, a deeper look at Halloween. I have a recipe for you for the soul cake. And you can even listen to Peter, Paul, and Mary, that great folk group from the 1960s. For those of you who are old enough to know them, you can even listen to them singing the song Soul Cake, which is a really lovely, lovely song. I'll come back to why I love that jack-o'-lantern. But over to you, Dave. So Halloween is a lot of fun. It has this serious origin, but it's a day for comedy, for laughter, for hilarity. And your web post this month is about a saint who embodies that.
Yes. I wrote a post called Seriously Silly because it's
Great title.
about a guy named Saint Philip Neri who lived in the 16th century in Rome. In fact, he was called the Apostle to Rome because he basically just stayed home and transformed the city by laughter. It was a time when the church was going through a lot of terrible corruption, and everybody was so serious. The Protestants had revolted, and the popes were pretty nasty. And so he thought people needed to lighten up a little. So that's what he did. He spent his life making people laugh.
Yeah, he was quite a trickster, right?
He was famous for, he gave some very bizarre penances. If he thought you were up for it, because he was very careful, he was very kind, very tender. But if he thought you were up for, a little bit of humorous humility, he could make you do a penance. One time he had a guy walk into the refectory. They had a little community called the oratory. So the guy walks into the refectory to do his penance, which involved walking in with a monkey on his shoulder. And the monkey was wearing a beretta, which is a hat worn by cardinals. So he's poking fun at, the clergy. He's poking fun at the guy who knows what the sin was with this guy committed. And not only was there a monkey, but the monkey was carrying like a toy gun.
Yeah.
So that's really nuts. Anyway, I think it's important for people to, sometimes spirituality is thought of as kind of spooky or extremely serious. And Philip Neri just had this wonderful light heart.
Yeah. And so there's a great incident. We're not going to tell you the story. You have to go to sandandsky.org. And as you see, the art we used for this podcast, and it also used for Dave's post, is a soccer ball with a red Cardinals hat on it, a beretta. So, what on earth is that? What's that? What's
There's
that
a story behind that.
There's a story behind it. So be sure to check out the post to get the story. Now, he also was very unusual when he celebrated Mass. He had a tendency to go into ecstasy.
Yeah,
right?
and he hated it if it happened in public, but unfortunately, sometimes it did. And so that he would kind of stop in the middle of Mass, and you just sort of have to wait for him to come down to earth again.
And then didn't he have a joke book on the altar?
Yeah, then the other thing he did was to prevent going into ecstasy. Yeah, he'd look at like a joke on the altar to kind of make himself come down and
come down to
continue.
earth.
continue with the mass. So he was a very eccentric, but loving and lovable guy.
He was eccentric, and yet at the same time, he is a model, a witness to the importance of a sense of humor in our lives.
Yeah, it's even in some circles, you don't hear about it much today, but there were times in the church when hilarity was considered a virtue.
Yeah.
And in fact, sorrow was considered a vice. That changed over centuries for some reason.
Yeah, and you write something very, very powerful about the role of laughter in your post.
Well, if we believe we're Christians, so we believe that Christ rose from the dead and that this great joy, this life can come out of death. And I think that there must have been a lot of laughter in the early church because people were thrilled that God had become human and walked with them and laughed with them, ate with them, celebrated with them. I love that.
So laughter is really a sign of very deep faith.
Yep. I
mean,
think that's a really important thing to remember, that people of faith, I think there's a radical confidence about life, about love, about hope, possibilities. And so you laugh.
Yeah. It's not frivolous. It can be frivolous.
Yeah, it can be. But I think if you've probably met people before who've been through some very difficult stuff and they laugh easily. There's something about being brought up against the dark side of life and grappling with it that somehow mysteriously, alchemically is transformed into joy and delight.
And what did Zorba the Greek say?
He said everyone needs a little bit of madness. And he said that's what keeps good sense from rotting. Or he also said at another place, that's what, if you don't laugh, you'll never snip the rope and break free.
Madness. Yes, madness is the grain of salt that keeps good sense from rotting. And everyone needs a little bit of madness. Otherwise, we'll never be able to cut the rope and be free. So Zorba, one of our great heroes. Let's go back to Halloween. What are some of your favorite costumes over the years, both as a kid and even because we've celebrated Halloween long into our adulthood?
Well, I seem to recall as a kid being delighted with Zorro, and I think I had a Zorro outfit one time when I was a kid. I liked that hat.
Oh yeah,
and of course there was a cape. And didn't he carry a whip or something?
Or a sword?
I guess it was the sword. Yeah,
sword. Yeah,
that's right. That was someone else who had the whip. That was Indiana Jones.
Yeah,
but Zorro was great. And then I always was interested in mimes. I used to watch the French mime.
Marcel
Marceau.
Yeah, another one of my great heroes.
Fascinated by him. And you and I dressed up as mimes one time.
Yeah,
and, that was fun.
Yeah, white face. Well, actually, we did our faces half white, half black. I think we were on opposite sides. So when we stood together, and we wore these red caps, and otherwise all in black with white gloves. That was a great costume.
That was fun. And then one time I was Harry Potter.
Oh, yes. We had a Harry Potter Halloween. Our whole community, at that time we were in monastic community, the whole community dressed up as Harry Potter characters. So Dave, you were a great Harry Potter with a big lightning scar across your forehead.
And then you wanted to portray someone who was the opposite of your personality.
Oh, that's quite a dig. Those of you who are listening, I was Hermione. Very true to character. She was, if you've read the books, very studious and a little bit bossy, always telling everybody what to do. And my sister Connie was their best friend, Ron Weasley. Now, this Halloween, I happen to know somebody in San Diego, California, and he's going to be Harry Potter.
Wow.
And his mom may be McGonagall, maybe somebody else.
Ooh.
His dad may be Dumbledore. His dad may be Hagrid. If you don't, I don't know what his brother is going to be, but Sam is going to be Harry, just like Dave.
Mm.
And if those of you who are listening have not read Harry Potter, this time of year, October, is a very good time to start reading those wonderful Harry Potter books. And going back to a sense of humor, a lot of the great saints, they don't actually say laugh. They don't actually say have a sense of humor, but they put it in other ways. Their lives embody that. So St. Paul, for example, St. Paul talked about
being fools for Christ,
about holy folly, the importance of holy folly. And St. Teresa said,
Lord, deliver me from sour-faced saints.
Sour-faced saints,
And
yes.
she was noted for being a singer and a dancer, and she was really good at keeping people's spirits up.
She wrote poems, she wrote music, she put on plays. And Jesus said, unless you become like little children, you cannot enter the kingdom of God. And so there are people who think that Halloween is childish, but what I think what it is childlike in the spirit of the gospel, in the spirit of Jesus, who said, you have to become childlike. You have to become like a child, which I think is part of why celebrating this holiday is so important. And then there are also people, besides thinking it's childish, and so they don't want to have anything to do with it, other people can even be afraid of Halloween, like the Puritans. They can think that it's superstitious. They can think that it's about black magic. It's people who are afraid of evil. Evil is real, no doubt about it. It's both inside us, it's outside of us. But does that mean that we should be cringing in fear? I don't think so. I think that we need to laugh more as a way to combat evil. You know, St. Teresa also said that she was more afraid of people who were afraid of the devil than she was of the devil himself. And I think that's very wise, because once again, speaking as Christians, the heart of our faith is the fact that Jesus rose from the dead. And one of the saints, St. John Chrysostom, talked about that as a big joke on the devil.
Yeah, poor devil. You know, he swallowed, he thought he was swallowing a human being, and he ended up gagging on God, I think he said.
Yeah, gagging on God. Even if you're not a very religious person, or don't think of yourself as spiritual, you probably are spiritual, you would know that wonderful line from the 23rd Psalm. It's really part of our culture. Even if I walk through the valley of darkness, I fear no evil, for you are at my side. Now, we might have different understandings of who is at our side, but we do not have to fear evil. Again, in the gospel, Jesus is always saying, do not be afraid. Do not be afraid. So part of what I love about Halloween is that if you dress up like a devil, you're making fun of the devil. If you dress up like a skeleton, you're laughing at death. You're understanding that death is not the end, but it's a doorway into new life.
Yeah, remember how we always used to say, if we take God seriously, we can take everything else lightheartedly.
That's exactly it. I think that's the heart of what Halloween is, that we take God alone so seriously. We take everything else, especially ourselves, lightheartedly. And then we laugh at ourselves, especially at Halloween. We are seriously silly, Dave. This is partly why I love jack-o'-lanterns. Part of what my post is about is, for years I was haunted by the jack-o'-lantern, the smiling jack-o'-lantern. Every time I would see it, I would feel my heart almost physically leap up. I would find myself soaring, and I would be filled with all this joy. And I just kept wondering, why is this moving me so much? And the Jungian psychologist Carl Jung, Carl Jung, said that we need to pay attention to whatever moves us deeply. Whenever we feel strong emotion, we need to pay particular attention because there's some kind of revelation there. And so I always paid attention to this. What is it about the jack-o'-lantern? And what I came to realize is that smiling jack-o'-lantern for me really represents the resurrected Jesus. It's Jesus back from the dead. Wouldn't you laugh if you came back from the dead? So that's why I put a candle in a jack-o'-lantern. That's why I always carve a smiling one. You know, there are many names that we use for Jesus. One is the light of the world. That's what I see when I see a jack-o'-lantern. And we also call Jesus the morning star who came back from the dead. All these images of light which are reflected so beautifully in the jack-o'-lantern. So our practice for the month of October is to celebrate Halloween and carve a jack-o'-lantern.
Okay.
And put a candle in that jack-o'-lantern. Make it a smiling one, a happy jack-o'-lantern, a funny one. Make your neighbors laugh, your family laugh, your friends laugh. And celebrate the fact that having a sense of humor is absolutely essential to your whole life. No matter how difficult it may be, no matter how sad you may be, remember that smiling jack-o'-lantern. And now it's time for our meditation. So set us up, Dave.
Okay. Find a comfortable position, usually sitting, but an alert position so you can stay awake. And take a few deep breaths. And lay aside any distracting concerns you may have. And open yourself to this season in which the angle of light has changed. Here in the northern hemisphere, the days are shorter, the nights are longer, it's cooler. Sometimes that brings a more reflective mode. So we'll enter that reflective winter on the horizon mode.
The season of autumn is here. Days are shorter, nights are longer. I like the growing darkness. It's quiet. It's peaceful. It makes me look inside and think about my life and the meaning of life.
Halloween is coming. I think about my costume. Will I be a pirate or a princess? A cowboy or a clown? A mime with a white face and a red hat? A fireman? Spider-Man? Or a mermaid?
Will I be Harry Potter or Hermione? Dumbledore or Hagrid? Or one of Harry's other friends?
Will I go out trick-or-treating or celebrate with family and friends? Will I carve a pumpkin or two or three?
I choose to carve a smiling face on my jack-o'-lantern. He lights up the night. He lights up the world. He smiles at me, at my family, my neighbors, at the whole world. Why is he smiling?
St. Philip Neri smiled a lot, played tricks, told jokes from the altar. He was seriously silly. Why was he smiling?
Why am I smiling? Buddhist teacher Thich Nhat Hanh said, if we are not able to smile, the world will not have peace. You need to smile even in your sorrow and to your sorrow, because you are much more than your sorrow.
Jesus said, unless you become like little children, you cannot enter the kingdom of heaven.
St. Paul said, we need holy folly.
St. Teresa said, Lord, deliver me from sour-faced saints. I'm not sour-faced, I'm smiling.
Let me be a little child. Let me play the fool like Philip Neri.
Let me put on my Halloween costume. Let me smile like my jack-o'-lantern.
Jesus burst out of the tomb and rose from the dead.
Life out of death.
Light out of darkness.
Smile, jack-o'-lantern, and remind me.
Smile, jack-o'-lantern, smile.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you for listening.
Join us in November for our podcast on Day of the Dead.
And remember to read our posts at tessabalecki.com
and sandandsky.org. And if you like what you've heard,
push that donate button.
You've been listening to Fire and Light.
Conversations about life, love, and soul.
The background music for Fire and Light is The Day We Met, composed and performed by Ricky Zhao.
Fire and Light's theme music is Dreamcatcher, composed and performed by Chris Martin and Jeff Harvey at Purple Planet Music.
Fire and Light is recorded in Tucson, Arizona, editing by David Levin.